there's a brand, what we have with Veeam, and there's what people know, and there's what has been out there and what's helped the momentum in the previous segment that Jeff explained about, great revenue, customer count, those numbers are great. But this is a very different time right now. And my experience at Veeam, been here for this is the 7th year. Every time we announce something, then the next question is, well, what about this? And something next, and the next, or a new integration, a new hypervisor, a new storage, a new capability, then the next. So this vision that Jeff outlined of the platform and those data sources, on-premises, public cloud, software as a service, and then service provider ecosystem. These products that we're going to talk about now, Clint and I, are really that best answer. And I got to be really frank, we're 30, 50 years late to physical backup, but there are some things we're doing, and cloud, some things we're going to be doing here that are really compelling to the market. So that was really one of the triggers that I had to decide to come back to Tech Field Day, because we're bringing something new to this new landscape of technology. So I want to kind of intro that is how, these are some of the things we're thinking and what we're looking at Veeam. It's a real different time. So a lot of times there's this stigma of Veeam for virtual, and that's still true. And we're going to tell the other half of the story and the perspective of the new products here. And this is something we're really excited about in the Evangelist team. And I wanted to kind of throw that out there. And before we get started, any questions, comments, observations, anything you guys really want to know about our new efforts that we can kind of cater how we can present here today? We have a plan, but we can also throw it all out the window if you have anything, to an extent, that you want to see or know about. Nothing?
Quiet crowd so far.
Oh man, we got to break out the jokes.
We'll start interrupting as soon as,
yeah,
first or second.
There's actually technology being talked about? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll let Clint start with this part of the story, but I kind of wanted to open it up right there.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. So first of all, thank you, everybody. Again, this is Veeam at Tech Field Day 13. And first of all, the piece that we're going to talk about is the Veeam Agent series. There's an agent for Windows that we're going to talk about, as well as the Veeam Agent for Linux as well. And now you might be thinking, well, why an agent? Why come out with an agent? Well, we started to dabble in this area a few years back whenever we announced a free product. It was actually the most successful free product that Veeam has ever launched. And if you know Veeam for a while, we've kind of been founded upon a free product, Fast SCP. So Veeam Endpoint Backup Free Edition has been downloaded over 1 million times. And most of you I see out there running Windows-based laptops, if you are, you might perhaps be running Endpoint Backup on there today to perform an image-level backup of a physical device, right? However, it's interesting because the way that the product was originally designed and marketed was to focus on endpoints, laptops, desktops. However, it just so happened that Microsoft designs their operating systems, their client operating system, to work somewhat like their server-based operating system. So folks started to install Endpoint Backup Free Edition on top of these servers, right? So that's how we kind of got into the market today. So we are kind of rebranding or relaunching Endpoint Backup as Veeam Agent for Windows. So the next question you're probably thinking in your mind, well, man, Clint, for years now, Veeam has been saying that agents are bad. Agents are horrible, the best VM backup, agentless. We used to tout that from the top of the building, right? And we still do, because agents don't make sense in certain environments, and they do in certain environments. Now, where they make sense is inside of a cloud-based workload, right? Something running in Amazon or something running in Azure or KVM for us, because we don't have bare metal hypervisor level access. You need to install something inside of the guest operating system, right? Physical machines, servers, laptops, desktops, things like that. You need to have an agent, right? Whereas on the VMware side of the fence and the Hyper-V side of the fence, you still don't want to put an agent inside of a guest virtual machine. So there's specific use cases where it makes sense and where it doesn't make sense. Now, kind of the cool part from our perspective, and I'll show you guys this in the demo here in a minute, is really this bottom bullet item here is the recover what you need in minutes, because that's really, backup's easy. And for us being a software company that's coming out with an agent, it's really tough to innovate there from a backup perspective. However, where we can innovate is on the recovery side of the fence, and that's the most important part. So if we look at the agents here, it focuses on a couple of key different areas, and that is Windows-based as well as Linux-based cloud installations, cloud instances. So like I said, Azure, Amazon, as well as physical devices, servers, laptops, desktops, endpoints, those roaming devices that are disconnected from the corporate network. And we're able to protect those in a couple of different areas, right? Hard drives, Veeam repositories, as well as what we call Cloud Connect, or our VCSPs offering backup as a service or disaster recovery as a service. The last piece here is the alternate hypervisors up at the top, the third bullet. Say for instance like KVM or OpenStack. A lot of folks ask us, well, what's your story around those areas? And for us, it is to install an agent inside those guest operating systems. So with that, we're announcing it's out in public beta right now. You can actually go out to veeam.com and you can sign up to get the public beta that is available. We're sending it out in a phased approach. So some of you might have signed up and haven't gotten the link to download it yet. That's OK. You're in the queue. We're phasing this out so that we can control that. However, some of the really cool pieces of it is, some of the things that excite me right on here are instant VM recovery straight to a Hyper-V virtual machine. So imagine I have a physical device, a server, or even something running in Amazon or Azure. I'm able to back that up, say, for instance, to a backup and replication repository on-prem using our Cloud Connect technology. And I'm able to instantly recover that into a Hyper-V virtual machine. The second piece on here that's really cool is the ability to do a direct recovery through the backup and replication UI out to Microsoft Azure, right? So I was able to take my Surface Pro that I have at home, use Agent for Windows, back it up to a Cloud Connect repository, and then do a direct recovery out to Microsoft Azure. That's really cool as well.
And that's free.
And that is completely 100% free. And it works with Backup and Replication Free Edition as well. However, one of the most requested features that we got whenever we had endpoint backup was, well, it's great, but I can't buy support. I can't run this free product in my data center. So the first thing that we've added is enterprise class 24/7 365 support. The other cool thing, and I'll show you here in a second, is this ability to protect endpoint protection for mobile users. I'll dive into that more in depth in a second. It's via a backup cache. However, this remote configuration management API as well, so you can actually export out a config to an XML file and then import that into multiple devices so I can manage these at mass and at scale. The last, yes, the backup cache. So imagine, myself, I travel very, very frequently. Away from my office, I'm disconnected, I have my laptop, but I still need to make sure that my backups are successful, right? So we actually keep a local hash copy of all of the restore points that are on my repository, so it's a forever incremental, right? So I have a full backup, and then each subsequent backup after that is an incremental. Even though I'm disconnected away from the corporate network, this backup cache allows my backups to still occur. They go to the backup cache locally, and then as soon as I plug into my network again, it automatically starts to upload those restore points to my repository. So even though I'm away, I'm still able to have my recovery point objectives be achieved.
Couple of points on that, and I think that's really important for a number of reasons. Number one, granted, not all of you could say that, backup, data availability, that type of stuff is your primary technology practice. But when it comes to this incremental backup being made without the full backup, that actually put your head around that. If you're talking about only the changed blocks without the source from which it came, you have to think about that for a bit. Now, this is a really good use case for mobile workers, people who travel, people who create, say, a presentation when they're on the go, and they take a backup that night, take a backup the next night, and the third day they accidentally deleted it. They could actually reestablish connectivity and be able to, again, mash with the source and be able to restore stuff without even being connected. So the capability here, and this would be, again, managed through a policy, which Clint will talk about here in a second. It's a really compelling way to put availability or the ability to do a backup, to put that in a place that you might not have thought possible for a mobile workforce. And a lot of technology goes into this, but the one thing I'll highlight, correct me if I'm wrong, Clint, is the first question is, if we have this cache, does it get thrown into the incremental backup? No. We're smart enough to know which again, from an image-based backup, we're smart enough to know, stay away from this, stay away from the page file. You know, we take a look at the geometry of the disk and exclude some things that we really don't want to put in an incremental backup. But we're really excited about that technology for a lot of use cases.
Specifically, I mean, the agent for Windows, so this is available, and we'll talk about this here in a few short minutes, it's available for our Veeam Cloud service provider. So these are guys that are offering backup as a service for offsite. You know, I purchased Veeam Backup and Replication Perpetual in my data center, but I want to protect that offsite via what we call the 3-2-1 rule, right? 3 copies of my data, 2 different types of media, 1 of those offsite. That offsite can go to a service provider that has been offering just VM level backup. Now they're able to provide this offsite backup as a service for all of your physical devices, your cloud instances, laptops, desktops, servers, the whole 9 yards. So now you have a complete solution from a cloud and service provider that I can offer to my customers and tenants. The last piece here is server. So it comes in 3 different flavors. There's free edition, there's workstation edition, and there's also server edition. The big things inside of server edition are what you would expect: the full enterprise class server scheduling, full application-aware image processing. So we've actually ported the entire application-aware image processing from backup and replication and built it into the agent for Windows. So I can do SQL backups, Exchange backups, Oracle backups, SQL log truncation, SQL log backups, Oracle log backups. We can do all of those types of things, right? And give you that same experience through B&R that you're familiar with today from an individual item level recovery perspective.
Oh, and then like I started out, every time we say, and now from Veeam, there's this, the very first time we get the question on Twitter is, what about that? And to give you a little bit of history, when it comes to the Windows backup product that Clint just described, Veeam Agent for Windows, formerly known as Veeam Endpoint Backup Free Edition, use cases, physical servers, endpoint devices, PCs, laptops, alternate hypervisors, workloads in the cloud. Very broad. However, what about the other set of operating systems? And Veeam Agent for Linux was announced in October of 2015 as a new product. We changed its name. I think the launch name we called it was Veeam Backup for Linux. But we changed the name to Veeam Agent for Linux to, for one, very distinctly make it different than the other product that people know from the virtual side. But a lot of the same logic, and they're on different development paths. There's different teams managing this. But a lot of the same capabilities that Clint spoke of will make their technologies and their capabilities visible on this Linux side. And Veeam Agent for Linux is, I think, more important when we think about the public cloud. It all comes down to the applications in many situations, how they're constructed, cloud-native apps and all that. But if you dissect these apps, I think very often you'll find a Linux OS behind it all. I don't have particular numbers, but I think it's pretty obvious that in the hyper-public cloud, Linux is a very popular OS, just by the nature of, especially on the Amazon side, right? And actually, I think there are like 15 or 18 different types of Linux, even in Azure. So it's very, very significant in the public cloud. And then also, again, the alternate hypervisor. And you think about KVM, Zen server, like when we announced Hyper-V in 2011, then the next question is about Zen. And actually, at that time, there was really good market share, but that's not the case right now. And then KVM is very hot right now. But the one thing about KVM is that it has a risk of, I don't know what the word is, variations. I don't want to say deviance, that sounds bad. But forking maybe is the right word because of its Linux nature. It does. Okay.
Please.
Fragmentation is the word I was looking for. Fragmentation?
Can you explain, using more than one word, what you were trying to communicate there?
Fragmentation of KVM as a hypervisor.
As in fragmentation of the project, as in different features move in different directions, or the thing just breaks?
Different directions.
Okay, thank you.
Vendor-specific implementations. I'll give you one example. Acropolis from Nutanix is categorically a fragmented or variation of the KVM hypervisor. So a lot of times people are asking us for KVM support in that particular vendor example. From a QA standpoint, to do what we're doing in VMware and Hyper-V is not a market we're going to go after right now. what is a good option for the public cloud, for this long list of other hypervisors, for physical servers, mobile devices, is Veeam Agent for Windows, Veeam Agent for Linux. And it's an image-based backup. I'm not even a Linux person, I'll be frank. I could even install it, so it's easy. And I think the ease of use in this day and age is actually very significant. You could kind of expect that in the Windows space, but in the Linux space, I think that's a welcome refreshment. So a couple points I want to highlight, much like the Windows product, is that there is a built-in snapshot of the whole volume. So the backups can take the whole Linux system, and it can integrate with the other products, Veeam Backup and Replication, and then also the console, which is a little bit farther out. We'll talk about that in a bit, specifically focused for the Windows product. But that integration is also important because there's a lot of use cases for Veeam Agent for Windows and Veeam Agent for Linux where an organization might have, I don't know, 2% of their compute is actually non-virtualized, for example. You know, the bulk of it is somewhere where you have a good story. But for those one-offs, this is a great story. Now, when we look at features, you know, we didn't do this for the Windows product, but the real important takeaway is that the Linux product and the Windows product are going to actually converge basically in terms of their capabilities. Of course, there's going to be nuancial differences between the Windows and Linux side of it, but the important thing to note is there will be a free edition. So Veeam Agent for Linux, which is available now as a free product, provides these 5 things here. So it can do an entire image-based backup. It can also do volume or file level. It has a built-in changed block tracking, which is really important for the incremental backups, and actually is very fast, this particular technology. The incremental backups, granted it's a not very active system, but they're sub 1 minute, which is very important. Now, let me say that I'm not saying that what we're doing on the virtualization side is slow, but what I'm saying is we don't have any other frameworks to integrate with. I don't have to ask vSphere for permission to do a backup. I don't have to talk to Hyper-V about whatever.
Can you explain the integration with Veeam Backup Replication for the free edition?
I will, and I'll show you when we jump to the third segment.
It's not all PowerPoint, I promise. I wouldn't let you do that.
Yes. The integration basically is expanding on an inventory of disk items. You know, historically, if you take a Veeam backup on disk, you put it to a Veeam repository for virtual machines. The agents can go to that same repository. Mm-hmm. And you can also direct restores from the console. So if you have a dedupe appliance, if you have a preference to move data to a cloud, Clint mentioned my beloved 3-2-1 rule, 3 different copies of your data, 2 different media, one of which is off-site. No matter what you're doing, it can address nearly any failure scenario, and it doesn't require any specific technology. It's, you know, a good way of thinking. Throw a twist, say one offline, then you're kind of one up on the ransomware era. But if you need to move data around, maybe I want to put it on tape, maybe I want to put it in a cloud, maybe I'm going to move it also to the other data center, to the other storage, to my first 30 days go here, and then I put this long set of retention on the dedupe, whatever. That's the type of integration you can see so that you can set your rules and have your availability too. And then, of course, recovery is important. Same or different hardware. It's kind of slick what we've done. There's recovery media per distro, which is important. But you can go to different hardware. You can, of course, recover a file. When we go to demo, I'll delete a picture and bring it back. And then, of course, the recovery through the console, the Veeam Backup and Replication console, as well as the actual Linux OS. Those are all capabilities that we have. And then the important thing on the server side, I'm going to jump through the workstation edition, is the ability, we call it pre-freeze, post-thaw. That's a term in this industry that really puts you into this really good place called application consistency. So if I'm going to protect something that's important, a database, an application, I can get it to a prepared state so that the application is okay, and I can drop in my fancy command for MySQL to let it know that I'm getting backed up, and then undo that when the time is done. Things like that. And that, much like what Clint said about the application-aware image processing engine for Windows, this is a practice point we've had on the virtual side for Linux OSs as long as we've had a backup product. So in a way, we're quite a bit late to this type of backup, but also in a way, we have incredible knowledge and expertise in it. So I'm real excited for that. So that is the Linux side of it. And we do have a demo on the third module that we're going to do. And any questions on that at this point on the Linux?
On both products,
or either product,
or the Linux.
Yeah, this part of it was what they do.
So
Yeah, Tom.
I noticed that it says that you can do same or different hardware for the recovery. Maybe I missed it, but can you do a VM recovery from the physical backup that you take using the Veeam Agent for Linux?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whenever you do the recovery, we show you through the UI, but you can either do instant recovery to a Hyper-V virtual machine, or you can export the contents out to a VMDK or a VHDX file, and then have that attached to another VM and boot it up.
And let me throw it another way, Tom. You can also take it, granted there's still a really good story in the VMware and Hyper-V side, but you can use these agents on maybe a workload or a storage system or whatever that can't take a VMware snapshot. It can't take the storage I/O stress of that. So there's a big use of opportunity for, really it's that fourth use case. It's not, we don't message it, but it's alternate hypervisors, physical, public cloud, but then maybe even in a VMware Hyper-V environment where, because the VMware snapshot's an interesting thing. And maybe if we don't have that, then we have some new options. So these are for both of the products.
For example, guest clustering.
Yes,
virtual,
can be an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not something we directly support today.
Yeah, right now.
Cluster aware.
Yeah, but
that's definitely something we're
first
looking
step.
at in the
Planned.
future.
Yeah, for sure.
It's definitely on the roadmap, for sure.
That Microsoft clustering in particular, due to its fancy requirement of PRDMs and the like.
Exactly.
Any other comments before? We're not going to change sessions yet. We're going to the second half of this one. Cool. Okay.
So that's all super fantastic, great. And I promise, guys, I appreciate your patience with this. Literally just like 3 more minutes. Bear with me, I promise, okay? And then we'll get to the actual meat of the demo and things. And we got some really good stuff for you. So that's all great. But what about management? How am I going to manage all these things? So I have all these devices, VMs, cloud instances, servers, laptops, desktops. I got all this stuff that I've deployed out there using this Veeam greatness. But how am I going to manage this stuff? So it's about what we call our management story. So the way that we see things today and this is what we're going to be talking about here in a few minutes, is for customers that have less than 10 devices that they've deployed the agent inside. They're going to probably be okay with manually installing it. They've only got 10 physical devices, laptops, very, very small environment, okay? The second customer is somebody who has more than 10 but under 100, right? For that, we have a command line-based API. You install it once, and then you're able to export out the configuration to an XML document, and then you're able to import that in. So you can use Config Manager or other software deployment tools to push out the software and then have the configuration applied at the end of it. You can completely automate and script the entire thing, okay? But for customers that have more than 100 computers, so this could be a service provider that's managing tenants remotely, very distributed, or an enterprise environment that has a mobile workforce, maybe remote branch offices that aren't connected to the corporate network. That's where the next piece comes in. And that's what we're going to be talking about and really going in depth in the demo today, is what we call the Veeam Availability Console. And this is going to be able to provide you that kind of framework or that user interface to manage all of these different sites. Because what we found in our customer base is that regardless if you're a service provider or an enterprise, you're faced with a lot of the same challenges, okay? So that being, I have maybe my main data center. I have somebody working in a home office. I have other remote offices. These can be tenants, but they all need to be interconnected and they all need to be able to be protected, right? And how do we do this? It's all faced with this kind of challenge of the cloud in the middle. And that's really what the Availability Console is set out to fix. And how are we going to do this? So through some couple different capabilities, tenant management. remote backup management. So I'm able to connect from a cloud environment, service provider, enterprise, to an on-premises backup and replication install and manage and have visibility inside of there, right? So if I'm a service provider or an enterprise, I can have that. Monitoring, alerting, showback, super important in enterprise environments. Whenever I was on that side of the fence, that was something we practiced with our application owners. Every quarter, we would give them reports. And the last piece, billing. If I'm a service provider offering up, services to tenants, I want to be able to charge for it. So we have a complete subscription-based billing system built into it that you can automate and have reports and bills sent out to your tenants on a regular basis. So you might have heard, last year we launched a product called Veeam Managed Backup Portal. It was in technology preview in the Azure Marketplace. Believe it or not, it's had over 1,000 deployments inside of Azure, right? So that's really popular, especially the Microsoft folks. They absolutely love us because we help them drive Azure consumption, right? So this was only available inside of Azure. But the first question we started to get asked was, well, when can I install this in my data center? Well, that's what the Availability Console allows. It can be installed on premises. This product is absolutely 100% free of charge. It is a free product for enterprise environments and our VCSPs. You can sign up to be a Veeam Cloud and Service Provider for no charge at all, but then you can sign up for the rental-based agreement if you want to offer backup as a service. But with this, you can do all those different cool capabilities that I just showed you, and I'll demo here in a minute. So what's this look like? From a service provider, I got all these different tenants along here on the bottom of the screen. We're able to connect to those using what we call our cloud gateway. It's built into Cloud Connect, so it's a single port encapsulation. It goes out over the internet using port 6180 and a TLS connection, so it's completely secure. All of the traffic is encapsulated throughout to that cloud gateway that would reside in a service provider DMZ environment, and then the traffic is forwarded internally to their backup infrastructure, right? So you're able to manage all these different endpoint devices through a service provider perspective, but then also an enterprise the same way as well. So there is a Cloud Connect technology that is eligible for enterprise deployment also.
Sorry to interrupt, there's a question that came in from Twitter. Does Veeam support bare metal recovery of a Linux host via Pixie Boot using Serial Console?
I answered him. I should have put the hashtag in there. And it would not be via Pixie Boot. Chris, it would be via a recovery media. It's an ISO per disti distribution, I should say. And if the smart user, meaning the person who wants to go down that route and get creative, could Pixie Boot that ISO, but we would provide that ISO in a highly automated realm that actually is not too far out. The serial bits where I'm like, time in the lab and answer that question completely. But good question, Chris.
So at this point, we're going to pivot into the actual live demos. But before we do that, what questions do you guys have, right? So we talked about a couple of different things. The two different agents, agent for Windows, agent for Linux, but then also the ability to manage all of these agents that I would have deployed. What questions? Anybody?
Or what do you feel like you might have missed? This part of our presentation is the story, right? And it's hard for us to tell the story when we can't anchor it on what we're doing with our backup products in the virtualized space so far, right? This is a new part of our story, and those of you, some of you know us a bit. This is different. It's a different story to tell. First of all, any comments? Does it make sense? Because we're trying to explain it to technical people. The message, the story, does it make sense?
So just kind of
some head nods. That's encouraging.
The product in here that is actually GA right now is the Veeam Agent for Linux. The Veeam Agent for Windows is out in public beta, and the Veeam Availability Console will be later, just in a few months, first half of this year. So getting your feedback is very important to us, so that we, if we're explaining it in a poor manner, or if there's something that we could be doing differently or should be doing differently, that's kind of what.
So don't apologize for bringing an agent out when you said agents weren't a good thing in the past. Lead with why they're a good thing now. That would be my biggest comment on your message.
Very fair point. I mean, the offline backups to the data center when they're disconnected, the Azure restore story,
and
restore to hypervisor.
To the underlying components.
Yeah.
Right.
The application restores.
Lead with why you're doing an agent rather than saying that we were wrong in the past when we said agents weren't good.
Well, I never said we weren't wrong. I said there's use cases where it makes sense.
Yeah.
The point of feedback on visual communication was very strong overall visual communication. There's one table in there with little dots inside of that. Yeah. You verbally, and I think you actually passed back and forth between both of y'all, verbally discussed the use cases for each cloud platform. I didn't catch, I didn't see, or I didn't catch, it may be in there, a clear spectrum of here's all the platforms we support, and here's the tools and products that we have that we go into it.
I like that.
It would, a lot of people run on a lot of stuff.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Having that, you told the story. Having the visual that backed that up, I think may be pretty powerful.
Maybe like Amazon Azure, check, X, yellow. VMware, Hyper-V, or physical, check, things like that, maybe in that type of view. Well, and then on the left is a capability that matches to.
That would absolutely be a way of communicating it.
Okay.
Even the simple thing, here are the platforms we support, here's the products that we have that support them, here's the thing, and these are the things that they do, right? It's a variance on that grid that you have. Okay. It's more platform specific versus products. It's inverting the platform and the product.
I see an infographic in my future, friends, and I'm going to call it Project Colin. So thank you for that, because I love my visuals.
I like that too. It takes those matrices we were doing and expands it to more of a platform. So I took a note on that.
It will align to the excellent verbal communication to describe it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And to the earlier point about about the agentless thing. So we did say that we still believe that it's not good to have agents on a virtual infrastructure. That's the reason why we make that a differentiation.
I actually like the word agent because it implies that there's central management available. So there's a certain definitive part of it.